Hello, dear students. I welcome you all on behalf of Sri Jayendra Rank Zone classes. Dear students, we are in a continuation of the chapter that is organism and population, and here we are going to talk about today a new topic that is adaptations. Okay, if we talk about these adaptations in detail, dear students, we are going to talk about the different plant communities and the adaptation which are shown by the plant communities as well as the animal communities. Okay, how the adaptation are occur. So while considering the various alternatives available to organism for coping with extremes in their environment, okay, there are various mechanisms through which they can survive in their unfavorable condition. But some are able to respond through certain physiological adjustment. But some are respond able to respond through their physiological adjustment, while other migrating temporary to a less stressful condition and they survive in the particular harmful conditions. So some are able to respond through certain physiological adjustment while the other migrating temporarily to the what a less stressful habitat. So these responses are actually their adaptations to survive in their unfavorable condition. So adaptation is we can say a one type of attribute of our organism that help or that enable our organism to survive and reproduce in habitat. Okay, so that is the one beneficiality of this, we can say, the adaptations. Okay, so if we talk about this attribute, this adaptation or attribute of an organism, so this adaptation can be morphological, physiological, and behavioral. Okay, so it can be any of them, and it is known that the many adaptations have evolved over a long evolutionary time. Okay, they have taken a long evolutionary time to particularly, we can say, show the adaptation, and they are genetically fixed. So they are genetically fixed means they are the genes of that particular organism are completely in equilibrium with the environment. Okay, and they show particular what proper adaptation, which is a beneficial one. But if we talk here, some may remain epigenetic, means not fixed genetically. Some may be fixed genetically and some may not. And some of the adaptation are as follows if we talk. And the first adaptation we are going to talk, that is the seals. If we talk about seals, they have a thick layer of fat which is known as blubber below their skin, and that reduce the loss of body heat. Okay, so this way the body heat loss can be prevented in seals by this particular blubber. That is a particularly a fat, and it is seen in case of these polar seals. Okay, in polar sea you will find this in seals, which is aquatic animal. Okay, so it acts as an insulator. Now after this, if we talk, then habitat another adaptation is the altitude sickness. When we talk about altitude sickness, it can be experienced or expressed at a high altitude where body does not get enough oxygen. Okay, it is expressed at high altitude where body does not get enough oxygen due to the low atmospheric pressure and cause nausea, fatigue, and heart palpitation. So due to the what unavailability of oxygen, okay, and low atmospheric pressure, the such type of symptoms are seen, that is the nausea, fatigue, and heart palpitation. But under this condition, To deal with this, the body increases RBC production, so it can carry a much amount of oxygen. Along with that, it decreases binding capacity of hemoglobin, okay, and increases breathing rate. It increases the breathing rate, okay. And this physiological adaptations allow organism to respond quickly to the stressful condition. So such way they can particularly deal with the stressful condition at this altitude sickness or at this high altitude. Now after this, if we talk about the third adaptation, then in some organisms like desert lizard, they lack a physiological ability to cope up with the extreme temperature but manage the body temperature by behavioral means. And in behavioral means, this desert lizard bask in the sun and absorb heat when their body temperature drops below the comfort zone. When their body temperature drops below the comfort zone, they will come in the sun, they will bask in the sun and they absorb the heat. But move into shade when the ambient temperature start decreasing. When the temperature start increasing, okay, they move into the shade. Okay, so such a way the particular behavioral adaptation is seen in case of the desert lizard. Then next adaptive mechanism is seen in kangaroo rat, and it is found in North American deserts. And in North American desert, it's fulfill its water demand or water requirement, or it capable of meeting their water requirement through the internal oxidation of fat. Two things they can fulfill their water demand. One is internal oxidation of fat. It also has the ability to concentrate its urine. Okay. Okay, so internal oxidation, fat oxidation, where water is released as a byproduct, it can also concentrate its urine so that minimal volume of water is used to remove excretory products. Okay, so concentrate its urine. So minimal volume of water is used to remove excretory products. Okay, such a way the kangaroo rat carry out that a water demand requirement, completion of water demand requirement. Then the next example is Archaebacteria. It is known that Archaebacteria, if we talk, they flourish at a temperature exceeding 100 degrees Celsius, while human can perform the metabolism in a narrow range. Okay, so Archaebacteria are important as they can flourish at exceeding 100 degrees Celsius, while human can perform the metabolism in a narrow range. Why? Because archaebacterial cell wall have pseudomerine, and in cell membrane have branched chain lipids with phytenyl side chain. And due to this cell wall and cell membrane characteristic, archaebacteria can survive in these particular extreme conditions. Now, apart from this, Antarctic fishes are known to survive. If we talk this, Antarctic fishes are known to survive below 0 degrees Celsius. And a wide variety of invertebrates and fishes are adapted biochemically survive great depth with crushing pressure. Okay, so when Antarctic fishes survive at below 0 degrees Celsius, it is known that Antarctic fishes have antifreeze solutes. Antifreeze solutes. by which they can manage to keep their body fluid from fizzing. If we talk about the invertebrate and fishes which are adapted to a great depth of the ocean with a crushing temperature could be greater than 100 times than the normal atmospheric pressure. Okay, so this is the what due to this they particularly they can survive. Now after this, if we talk about another adaptations, it is known that many desert plants, it is known that another adaptation, if we talk, many desert plants are there which are known as xerophytes. They have thick cuticle on their leaf surface. They have thick cuticle on their leaf surface and have sunken stomata to minimize water loss through transpiration. Okay, so many desert plant are known, which are known as xerophytes. They have a thick cuticle on their leaf surface and they have sunken stomata to minimize the water loss through this transpiration. They also have they also have CAM, that is crassulacean acid metabolism pathway that enable stomata to remain closed during daytime. That is scotoactive stomata. And it is known that these photoactive stomata are open during night only. Okay, these things are seen. Okay, that also particularly the water loss can be prevented. And these can plants are succulent xerophytes, so they have a water holding capacity. Now, apart from this, in some desert plant, like Opuntia, leaves are modified to spines, and when spines are for there is a reduction of surface area occur, and due to formation of spines the reduction of surface area occurs, so they are modified to spines to minimize water loss. Okay, under such condition stem become flattened, green colored, that is phylloclade, and perform photosynthesis. So such a way we can say the adaptation is seen in case of this particularly desert plants. Now there are several adaptation that we are going to talk, and in adaptation it is known that there are some rules, okay, and the rules that explain adaptation or modification, adaptation or modification in organism as influenced by temperature, as influenced by temperature, okay. So these are the particular rules, and in this the first rule we are going to talk, that is Allen's rule, and this rule is given in NCRT, so you should remember that Allen's rule says that mammals of colder climate generally have shorter ear and limbs, that is extremities, to minimize heat loss, okay. So mammals of colder climate generally have shorter ear and limbs to minimize the heat loss. So presence of shorter ear and limbs in a colder climate, that is particularly seen in case of the Allen's rule. Another rule, it is known as Bergman's rule. Bergman's rule says that warm-blooded animals like birds and mammals have larger body size in cold climate than in hotter areas. Okay, so that is seen in case of the Bergman's rule. Now after this, the third C is Rensch's rule. Rensch described that in colder climate, birds possess narrow and acuminate wings as compared to broader wings of birds found in warmer areas. Okay, so birds of colder climate possess narrow and acuminate wings, means small wings compared to the broader wings of birds found in warmer areas. And the last rule, which is described by Jordan, and it is known as Jordan's rule, and it says that as the temperature is lowered, some fishes possess larger wings. As temperature is lowered, some fishes possess larger, sorry, not wings, larger size with larger number of vertebrae. So in all these four rules, you can see that are the adaptation or modification in organism influenced by temperature, and based on this, these four rules are given. What Allen described in Allen's rules, Allen says that mammals of colder climate generally have shorter ears. So mammals when live in a colder climate, they have shorter ear and limbs to minimize the heat loss. Same way, Bergman said that warm-blooded animals, or we can say birds and animals, have a larger body size in cold climate than the hotter areas. Okay, warm-blooded animals. Whereas Ramsay said that the birds possess a narrow and acuminate wings compared to broader wings in colder climate. Okay, and Jordan said that at the temperature is lower, some fishes possess a larger size with a large number of vertebrae. Okay, so these are the observations which is seen by the different scientists in case of the adaptations. Now, okay, so Eugen Warming was the botanist who, after studying this many things, he classified a plant communities into three ecological groups. That is hydrophytes, mesophytes, and xerophytes. Now, the basis which was used during this classification is the dependence of a plant on water and relation of plants to water. The dependence of a plant to water and the relation of a plant to water. Okay, based on this, the particularly the warming classified. As you know that hydrophytes of the plant are the water-loving plants, so they are found in a watery or aquatic habitat. Mesophytes are found in a area or in a condition where the soil is not too much dry, too much wet. In the mesic condition, they are found. And xerophytes are the plants which are found in the dry areas or where the water deficiency is found. So if we talk about all these three in detail, first we are going to talk about hydrophytes in detail. So they are the water-loving plant. So these hydrophytes prefer to grow in water or in very wet places. So plants that grow in water or very wet places are called hydrophytes. They are further subdivided into five categories. Okay, and the first category is the free-floating hydrophytes. If we talk about this free-floating hydrophytes, these have no contact with the soil. Okay, so they are not in a contact with soil, they are freely floating within the water body, so they float freely on the water surface. And if you talk about such plant, the pistia, lemna and salvinia are such important plants which are free floating. So if this is the water body, if this is the water body, you will see that these are floating on this particular plant part. Here they found floating on the water body. And these are, you can see, these are the pistia, this is lemna, and this is salvinia. Okay, such a way they are found. Second group is rooted hydrophytes with floating leaves. Now, as the name suggests, they have a roots, okay, and along with that, they have a floating leaves. So these roots are fixed to the substrate. They are fixed in the particularly, we can say, the mud, but their long petiolated leaves float on the water surface. And if you talk about the example are the nymphia and victoria regia. You can see this is nymphia. Okay, Nymphia float on the surface. Okay, they have a floating leaves, but their roots are embedded in the mud. Okay, due to the presence of long petiole. And same thing is seen in the Victoria regia. In this also they have a particularly leaves on the surface, but the petiole, long petiole is there, and through which this is embedded in the mud. Apart from this, there are the submerged suspended hydrophytes. And if we talk about submerged suspended hydrophytes, they have a contact only with the water. They are not seen on the surface, and they are completely submerged and raw, not rooted in the mud. They are not rooted in the mud, and they are not visible on the surface. They are completely present within the water, and the hydrilla and utricularia are the plant which are submerged suspended hydrophytes. You can see these are the hydrophytes, that is hydrilla, and this is the utricularia. Then the next hydrophytes are the submerged rooted hydrophytes. If you talk about the submerged rooted hydrophytes, these are completely submerged in water, means they are present in water but attached to the substratum by their root, attached to the mud by their root. And the example is the Vallisneria. You can see such Vallisneria is seen. And the last group of plant are the amphibious plants. And amphibious plants live partly in water and partly in air. Okay. So because of their amphibious nature, they are known as amphibious plant. So Sagittaria, Typha, and Limnophila are the amphibious plant. So after the five categories, if we see, there are some ecological adaptation in the hydrophytes. This ecological adaptation can be morphological as well as anatomical. So if we talk about morphological and anatomical characteristics features of this hydrophytes or water loving plant, they are found in water and there is abundance of water. So the loss of water is not a problem with these particular plants, because whatever the loss will occur, they will be completed or meet the difference by the available water, because too much water is available nearby. So if we talk about this morphological characteristic first, in root if we see, then the roots are usually very poor in most of the hydrophytes, and here root cap are absent. Okay, so what is found in this in place of these two? And in some amphibious plant which grow in mud, the root are well developed with the root cap. But if we talk about in hydrophytes, the root are usually very poor in most of the hydrophytes. So here we can say root are either completely absent, either completely absent or poorly developed. Okay. Apart from this, root cap are absent, and in place of root cap, root pocket are present. Now cap, root pocket are the non-functional root cap. Non-functional root cap are known as root pocket, and they provide buoyancy. Okay, they provide, so they are known as balancing organ. Okay, so this is the thing seen in case of the root. In some plants, root cap are replaced by the root pocket, as we have discussed. Now, if we talk about stem, stem is long, slender, and flexible because they are found in a what particularly watery condition. So if it is completely present in water, it should be flexible. And this particular stem, which is a long, slender, and such, it is seen in case of some example, that is Potamogeton and Hydrilla. Okay. Now, after this, if we talk about characteristic of leaves, in leaves, you will see that they are hydrophytes, so their leaves are thin, they are long, okay, and ribbon shaped. So ribbon shaped leaves can be observed. So long ribbon shaped leaves and thin leaves are observed. Now this thin long and ribbon shaped leaves. If we see, it is seen in case of the Vallisneria. Okay. Apart from these, floating leaves are large and flat with upper surface. So floating hydrophytes have a large entire and flat surfaces, and such particular floating leaves are seen in case of the nymphia. Okay. Now apart from this, if we see, it is known that petiole may be swollen and spongy, and if we take an example, then it is icornia. Okay. And here it is also seen as the emergent, means which are visible on the surface of the water body. That emergent hydrophytes show heterophyly. So if we talk about heterophyly, that is, if we talk about this, then in heterophyly, the specifically it is seen that heterophyly leaves below the water are long, narrow, and dissected, and outside the water those outside the water are entire and broad. So those leaves which are below the water, within the water, they are dissected and narrow and long, while those which are outside the water, they are broad and entire. And such hydrophily, it is known as a particularly environmental hydrophily. It can be called as environmental heterophily. And such environmental heterophily, if we talk about example, an example are ranunculus. Ranunculus is one of the important example that you should remember. Other example are Sagittaria and Limnophylla. Okay, so such type of morphological adaptation are seen in case of the hydrophytes. Now, after this morphological adaptation, if we talk some about this anatomical adaptation, then in hydrophytes, the cuticle is totally absent in the submerged parts of the plant. Why? What is the need of the cuticle? Cuticle is needed to prevent the loss of water. But here, these hydrophytes have too much water in surroundings, so there is a no issue with the loss of water and no any defect in this with this particularly we can say the loss of water. So cuticle is absent, and it may be present in the form of very fine film, but usually it is absent. Epidermal cell wall, if we talk, are thin and perform absorption and assimilation and also contain chloroplast. So epidermal cells of the hydrophytes have this particular stomata. Okay, sorry, the chloroplast. So they perform a particular photosynthesis as well as absorption. Stomata are totally absent in submerged hydrophyte. Whatever the hydrophytes which are totally embedded within the water body, they do not have a stomata. The plant with the floating leaves, the leaves are epistomatic, means they are present on the upper surface. Stomata are present on the upper surface. The mechanical tissue and xylem are poorly developed because what we can say, the conduction can easily take place through the capillary movement and they can be absorbed from the all over the surface of the body. So because of this, mechanical tissue and xylem are poorly developed. Okay. Then all hydrophytes contain parenchyma. and due to the presence of parenchyma that help in gaseous exchange and buoyancy. Okay, so what is meant by buoyancy? Buoyancy is what? It is the upward force exerted by a fluid that opposes the weight of an immersed object. So it is a what? Upward force that is exerted by a fluid that opposes the weight of an immersed object, so that weight or that particular object can float within the water body. Okay, so parenchyma are large, okay, mechanical tissue. That is, sclerenchyma is either poorly developed or absent, or xylem can be poorly developed or absent. Vascular tissue are also poorly developed. Cuticle is absent. Stomata are epistomatic, and epidermis is always single layered, and they have a chloroplast. Okay, so these are the anatomical adaptations, and you can see why this is anatomical adaptation are such, because they are totally embedded within the water body. Okay, so this is all about the hydrophytes, and these are the, we can say, adaptation of the hydrophytes. Now, after this, next we talk about mesophytes and xerophytes. So first we talk about the mesophytes. What are mesophytes? Mesophytes are the plant which are found in the mesic condition. Mesic means which is neither too much dry nor too much wet. Okay. So mesophytes are the plants that grow in a habitats where water is neither scarce nor abundant. It is the intermediate state is there. And in such habitat, the pore space in soil is occupied almost equally by a water and soil atmosphere. Okay, so pore space in soil is occupied almost equally by water and soil atmospheres, or soil air components, we can say. So such a balanced condition of water and gases in very suitable. So equal amount of water and gases are found. So in very suitable for the plant growth, and hence in mesophytic condition we find the best growth of forest and crop plant. Best growth is seen in the mesophyte condition. So both excessive water and excessive dryness create a large variety of situation which are adverse condition for the plant growth, and only a few species specifically adapted to the too watery condition and too dry condition can grow. So it is a somewhat harmful conditions. Forest and crop plant are seen in mesophytic condition because mesophytic is the best condition. And mesophytes are very extensive on land. Majority plants are in a mesic condition. So if we talk about the crops like maize, wheat, barley, tropical and temperate forest, all these crops of these areas are the particular mesophytes. Okay, so they grow in the conditions where there is neither wet neither dry. Okay, so here you will see the mesophytic condition. This is the wheat, okay, barley, then we can say the tropical forest. These all are the particularly mesophytes. If we talk about the cucurbita leaf, cucurbita is also mesophyte, and that also shows these particular conditions. Okay. Now, after the hydrophytes and mesophytes adaptation, next we are going to talk about the xerophytic adaptation. Now, xerophytic are the adaptation for the water scarcity. There is a what, particularly a water deficiency. So xerophytes are the plant which grow in a places of a deficient water supply. So this plant grow in habitat deficient in water. Now, these are classified into three categories, that is ephemerals. First, here they are classified into three categories on the basis of life cycle. We remember they are classified into three categories based on life cycle and water storage. Based on life cycle and water storage. And in that, the first one are the ephemerals. If we talk about ephemerals, these are also a drought evader and drought escaper. They are also known as a drought evader or drought escaper. Now, ephemerals mean short-lived. Okay, they are short-lived. So these are mostly found in dry zone. Okay, and they escape this dry zone. Okay, so they complete their life cycle in very short period, that is 6 to 8 weeks. Okay, the brief lifespan, they are short living, and they escape dry season by disappearing and leaving their seeds. Okay, so here the ephemerals, it is known that they escape dry season by disappearing and leaving their seeds. These seeds will remain during the what a particularly unfavorable or dry condition, or like a drought like condition, and they escape this drought. So such eggplants are tribulus is one of them plant. Okay, cassia and tora also are the two plants which are the ephemerals or short life plants. Because of this they are known as drought evader or drought escaper. Now another plants are the succulents. Succulents are also called as fleshy xerophytes. They are also known as fleshy xerophytes. And these are also called a drought avoiding plants. They are also called a drought avoiding or a drought resistant. They are called drought avoiding or drought resistance. It is known that they absorb large quantities of water during rainy season and store in different plant parts, usually in the form of mucilages. Okay, so they absorb large quantity of water during the rainy season and they store it in the different parts. So when there is any mechanical injury, they suffer only externally. Okay, and in the water scarcity also they suffer from the externally. Okay, so they are, because of this they are known as drought avoiding or drought resistant. Drought cannot harm them. So the stored water is used during the dry periods. If we talk about the water can be stored here in the stem, leaf, and the root. If they store in the stem, they are known as stem succulent, and stem succulent are the opuntia and euphorbia. Okay, now stem succulent, if we talk opuntia, the term for the stem succulent is used, that is chylocolic, and the opuntia is the plant, and another one is the euphorbia. Apart from these, leaf succulents are there. These leaf succulents are known as Chlorophyllus. Okay, and the examples are the aloe, agave, and bryophyllum. The root succulents are, if we talk, you can write here example, that is agave. Root succulent are the chylorhizas. They are known as chylorhizas, and they are asparagus is the one of the root succulent which store the water in the root. So these are the succulents. Now after the succulent plants, the next are the some xerophytes which are known as non-succulents. Now non-succulents are known as, they are also called a true xerophytes. They are the true xerophytes. Okay. And if we talk about the non-succulents, these are the perennial plants. Okay, means they have a lifespan of too many years and which can withstand prolonged period of drought. A long drought, they can survive with the long drought period, a prolonged drought period. They can withstand a long drought period. So because of this, they are known as perennial non-succulents. And the examples are the casuarina and others like the Ziziphus, Nerium, Acacia are there. So you can write the casuarina, then Ziziphus, Nerium, Acacia, and Caparis. These are the non-succulent. And non-succulent are the true xerophyte. They are also known as drought endurers. Drought endurers. Okay. Now, so this is the what classification on the basis of life cycle and water storage in these three types of xerophytes we have discussed, that is ephemerals, succulents, and non-succulents. Now, after this, we are going to classify xerophyte into two groups based on nature of soil based on nature of soil and unavailability of water. So based on nature of soil and unavailability of water, the xerophytes are of two types. The one is physical xerophyte and another one are the physiological xerophyte. Now physical xerophyte, if we talk, physical means the soil is physically dry. So physical xerophyte are plant or xerophytic plant growing in dry soil. Okay, that is physical dry soil due to shortage of water. So when the soil is completely dry, actually there is no water, then and some plants grow in that condition, they are known as physical xerophyte. So if you talk about the examples of physical xerophyte, the opuntia and casuarina are the physical xerophyte. But when we talk about the physiological xerophyte, these plants grow in soil having sufficient water, sufficient water which is not available, which is not available due to high salt concentration or very low temperature. So here what in physiological xerophyte or physiologically xerophyte grow in physiologically dry soil. Physiologically dry soil means the water is available but it is not available for absorption. Why? Because the salt concentration is high. Okay. So this is the what are physiological xerophytes. So if completely water is not there, then the plants growing in that area they are physical dry. If water is there but it is not getting absorbed and plants grow in such condition, they are known as physiological xerophyte. Okay. Now, next we are going to talk about some of the ecological adaptations in xerophytes. That is the plants growing in water deficient soils. So if we talk about their morphological adaptation, here they are xerophytes, so they need to conserve the water. So this plant grow in water deficient conditions, and when we see their morphological adaptation in root, you will see that the roots are well developed in them. These roots are profusely branched and long with extensive branching and spread over wide areas. Root hairs and root cap are well developed. Why? Because they need to absorb too much water because there is a nutrient deficiency in their body also. Okay, so these are the particular plants. Now, it is known that root are deep in root are deep in phreatophytes. So phreatophytes are the deep-rooted plants, and deep-rooted plants they have a deep root when they are the xerophytes. Now, after the root, if we talk about the stem are stunted, woody, hard, and covered with thick bark. Why thick bark? Because a water loss occur, and particularly they have a water scarcity. Because of this, they have a thick woody structures compared to the flexible structure in the hydrophytes. Stem is usually covered by hairs and waxy coating, okay, to prevent the loss of water. And in stem, you will see that plant may show modification of stem into the leaf-like structure, and in stem, phylloclade are found. So phylloclade is a when a stem becomes flat and carry out photosynthesis, it is known as phylloclade, and this phylloclade is found in Opentia. Now, after this, if we talk about the morphological adaptation or morphological characters of the leaves of the xerophyte, the leaves are very much reduced, small, scaly, light, and sometimes modified into spine. They become spine. Why? When they become spine, they are needle-like, and due to the needle shape, the surface area getting reduced. And when surface area of transpiration get reduced, the rate of transpiration get reduced. So it is seen, leaves are seen like a needle in this. Sometimes leaves are completely absent also. So these are the morphological adaptation of the xerophytes. Now we are going to do the anatomical adaptation. Anatomical adaptation are also in such a way that they try to conserve the water. So if we talk about the epidermis, this epidermis is covered with thick cuticle to reduce the transpiration. They have a thick cuticle which reduces the transpiration. Okay, and thick cuticle on the leaf and stem, both epidermis. Epidermals have silica crystals also. Then epidermis may be multi-layered. So multi-layered epidermis also reduces the rate of transpiration. The chances that it can reduce. Stomata is present in lower epidermis of the leaves. That is hypostomatous. And present in pits or sunken in some plants. Means suckus means deep stomata are there, not they are on the upper surface side. Now, why they are present more on the lower epidermis? Because if they are more present on the upper epidermis, the water loss can occur up to the maximum level. Mechanical tissue and vascular tissue are well developed because mechanical tissue are found due to the water scarcity, and the vascular tissue are required because the transport is properly required for the water and other components. Okay. Now, apart from this, the stomatal frequency is reduced. Is reduced. Then water storage tissue is present. So due to such anatomical and morphological characteristic, they can particularly conserve the water. Now, after these xerophytic conditions, now we are going to talk about the adaptation for salinity. And when we talk about the adaptation for the salinity, here we talk about the halophytes, and halophytes grow in saline soil. Okay. Now, here they have a morphological and some anatomical adaptation. Now, if we talk about the morphological adaptation of halophytes, you will see that in this, if we talk about the root, the pneumatophores or respiratory root, pneumatophores or respiratory root are found in mangroves or mango plant. Now, these pneumatophores are negatively geotropic root. Okay, and this negatively geotropic root, that is pneumatophores, have lenticels. These lenticels are also known as pneumatothodes for gaseous exchange. Okay, so that is found in case of the root. If we talk about the stem of the halophytes, in stem you will see that stem is mostly succulent or fleshy, means water storing. And if we talk about leaves, leaves are evergreen, thin and leathery. Okay, so such morphological adaptation are seen in case of leaves, stem and root. The root characteristic are important that you should remember. Now apart from this, when we talk about anatomical adaptation in halophytes, then we will come to see that the presence of thick cuticle on stem to prevent the water loss. So thick cuticle on the stem, and it is known that upper and lower leaf epidermis is thickly cuticularized. Okay, thickly cuticularized. Now apart from this, if we talk about next characteristic, the stem hypodermis of this, we can say halophytes is multi-layered and thick walled. Then pericycle is sclerenchymatous and it is 3 to 4 layered. Okay, then vascular tissue is well developed. And next, sunken stomata are present only in the lower leaf epidermis. Okay, so sunken stomata are present only in the lower leaf epidermis. So this you will see. Okay, so this is the thing or anatomical adaptation which are seen in case of the halophytes. Okay, so that is what about the all the adaptations which are seen in the different type of organism and the different type of plants that we have studied. I hope you have understood, and that is all about what we can say the adaptations.